Thank you, Kathy. Isn't that a beautiful song? Just love the words to that song, and it's such a powerful question to ask ourselves also in all of those situations that she was describing. So what would love do here? What would love do? Well, we are continuing with our summer series, our reading series with Winnie the Pooh. We started last week with that, and as I was again researching the kind of the overview of the book, the one that I found the funniest, or probably the most appropriate, I should say, it's a story about a dumpy little bear that wanders around asking silly questions, making up songs, and going through all sorts of adventures without ever accumulating any amount of intellectual knowledge or losing his simple-minded sort of happiness. That's a good description, isn't it? And then last week we followed Winnie the Pooh and his little friend Piglet as they were tracking woozles. And we said that woozles were probably in the snipe family. If anybody's ever been snipe hunting or heard stories about snipe hunting, woozles are probably in that same family. And we discovered that we too can be tracking woozles in our minds and in our imaginations, can't we? We sometimes can start tracking those thoughts and following those thoughts, and it's almost like chasing our tails, or my example of the hamster wheel. And we can follow those until they become beliefs, things that we actually believe, and they can be empowering for us, or they can scare us. They can scare us, and we can make up stories that take us in a different direction. And then we see where Christopher Robin is always the go-to for Winnie and the gang. You know, whenever they need help rescuing, or whenever something wonderful happens they want to share, it's Christopher Robin. Where is Christopher Robin? And he was in the tree last week, wasn't he? He was in the tree, and he pointed out to Pooh what they were doing of walking in circles and tracking their own footprints. And we asked, consider, who is your go-to? Who is your go-to? And suggested that maybe God, maybe Spirit, maybe a Spirit-centered life. In those times when we're afraid, asking for clarity, asking for direction, asking for guidance, or when we're in joy and delight, celebrating in great gratitude, living that Spirit-centered life. And we suggested the idea of let go and let God may be more accurate in let go and let God flow through us. Because in our desire to control our life and direct and organize, sometimes we can block that natural flow, because Spirit can only do for us what Spirit does through us. And we are the only ones that can block that flow because we have choice. So let go and let God flow through us. Flow through us. So today we're going to continue with our tales, and we're meeting two more of the characters. We're going to meet not only Pooh, but Eeyore, that gray donkey that's all sad, kind of depressed probably in reality, right? And then Owl. Owl is the academic. He's the wise guy, but he's also a little scattered. He's a little scattered sometimes and disoriented, but yet he carries the wise owl persona. So my talk is on this story of Eeyore loses a tail. Eeyore loses a tail. And it starts off with Eeyore standing alone in a thistly corner of the forest, thinking sadly to himself, why? When Pooh comes along and asks, how are you? Eeyore shook his head from side to side. Not very how. I don't seem to have felt at all how for a long time. Oh, dear, dear, said Pooh. I'm sorry about that. Let's have a look at you. So Eeyore stood there, gazing at the ground, and Winnie the Pooh walked all around him once. Why, what's happened to your tail? What's happened to it? It isn't there. Are you sure? Well, either a tail is there or it isn't. You can't make a mistake about it, and yours isn't there. Then what is? Nothing. "Let's have a look," said Eeyore. And then he turned around slowly and looked as far as he could, and he couldn't see his tail. And he turned around the other way as far as he could, and he couldn't see his tail. And then he just bent down and looked between his legs, and he still couldn't see his tail. And he says, "You must be right." And Pooh says, "Well, of course I'm right. I'm standing back here, I can see, right?" That accounts for a good deal. It explains everything. No wonder. Can't you just hear Eeyore? No wonder. And Winnie the Pooh says, "Well, you just must have left it someplace. Somebody must have taken it. How like them." Pooh felt that he ought to say something helpful, but he didn't quite know what to say. I mean, what do you say in that circumstance? So he decided to do something instead. "Eeyore," he said solemnly, straightening up, he said, "I, Winnie the Pooh, will find your tail for you." "Thank you, Pooh. You're a real friend, not like some." So Winnie the Pooh went off to find Eeyore's tail. So how very helpful indeed, right? Here's Eeyore losing his tail and getting all more depressed than he already is. And Winnie says, "I will be your champion. I declare I will go and find your tail." Now, he didn't have to do that. Eeyore didn't say, "Please help me find my tail." He didn't say, "Go find my tail." Winnie just, out of his love, out of his generosity, out of his kindness and friendship, he said, "I will go find your tail. I will go find your tail." No reward, no benefit to Pooh at all, right? No consideration for his own safety, provisions, nothing. He just said, "I will do this." And this is a strong declaration. And if we think about science of mind, and our creative process, our affirmative prayer, it's the third step of treatment, isn't it? It's our declaration statement. He spoke it with clarity. "I will find your tail." He believed that he could. He believed that he could. He didn't doubt. So he spoke that word into the law, believing fully that he was going to find that tail. And what's next then? Well, he's decided that he was going to go, and he had a thought. I might need help with this. I might need advice with this, because I'm not quite sure how to go about this, because Eeyore could have been just about any place and lost this tail. So I'm going to go in the forest. And as he's walking in the forest, he has a thought. I'm going to go see Owl. He's the smartest one in the whole forest. I'm going to go see Owl and ask him to help me, to guide me. So he's listening to his inner guidance now, isn't he? Listening to his inner guidance and following that guidance to go see Owl. So Owl lives at the Chestnuts. It's the old world residence of great charm, which was more grand than anybody else's, or it seemed so to the bear, because it had both a knocker and a bell pull. Underneath the knocker, there was a notice that said, and I'll translate, "Please ring if an answer is required." Can you read that? And underneath the bell pull, there was a notice that said, "Please knock if an answer is not required." Now, these notices had been written up special by Christopher Robin, who was the only one in the forest who could sort of spell. Phonetically at least. And Winnie the Pooh read the two notices very carefully, first from left to right, then from right to left, just to make sure he hadn't missed anything. And then to make quite sure, he knocked and pulled the knocker, and pulled and knocked the bell rope. And he called out in a very loud voice, "Owl, I require an answer." This is Bear speaking. Wow. Are we that clear in placing our demand into the law? Old-time religious science, that was how it started out in Christian science, was you place your demand into the law. Today we say we place our word into the action of law, a little softer. But it used to be I place my demand into the law, and Pooh's pretty much demanding there, isn't he? I require an answer. I require an answer. And Owl says, "Hello, Pooh. How's things? Pooh says, terrible and sad, because Eeyore, who is a friend of mine, has lost his tail, and he's moping about. So could you very kindly help me to find it for him? Well, the customary procedure in such cases is as follows. What does customary proceed cake mean? Said Pooh. For I'm a bear of little brain and have no tolerance for long words. They bother me. It means the thing to do. Oh, as long as it means that, I don't mind. The thing to do is as follows. First, issue a reward. Then we write a notice that we say we will give a large something to anybody who finds Eeyore's tail. Well, then we write out this notice and put it up all over the forest, and he explained that the person to write the notice was Christopher Robin. It was he who wrote the ones on my door. Did you see them when you came in? Well, Pooh had been sitting there, and it was about 11 o'clock, and we know that Pooh eats between 11 and 12 every day. So he's getting distracted, and he's already asked Al a couple of times if he has anything he can, a little bite of honey. And Al's ignoring him and continuing to talk. So Pooh now closes his eyes and just starts going, yes, no, oh yes. Not really listening to Al because Al is pontificating about all of these words and signs and things. So when Al asked him if he'd seen the signs, it was the turn for a no, even though he'd seen them. So now Al's dragging him out. You got to come look at them. Come look at them now with me. So they go out. And Pooh looked at the knocker and the notice below it. And he looked at the bell rope and the notice below it. And the more he looked at the bell rope, the more he felt that he had seen something like it somewhere else, sometime before. Interesting things happening here, isn't there? Some interesting things going on. Pooh is distracted by his noontime appetite. So he's not really paying attention to Al's words. He's not really paying attention. However, because Al now is insisting that he go outside, Pooh has to look once again at the signs and the bell pull. So it's a very interesting, was it simply that the bear was hungry, or was something bigger at play here? Because he missed the bell pull on the way in, which is in fact Eeyore's tail. He missed it. So the universal law had to conspire here, right? And go, all right, you got to go out and look at it again because you missed it the first time. I already gave it to you. It's like the story of the helicopter, the boat, and what was the third thing? The helicopter, the boat, whatever. And the guy, goes to heaven when he dies and says, hey, I prayed for you to save me. And God goes, I sent you a helicopter, a boat, and whatever the other thing was. But it's like this. He missed it, so let's go look again, right? Let's go look again. And we can do that frequently. We can get caught up because even Al was listening to Pooh ask his question. I need to find my friend Eeyore's tail. I need help in doing that and locating it. Al wasn't really listening to that, though, was he? Because he was all in his stuff about solving the problem, answering the question. He was not in alignment with that. And then Pooh was more interested in ringing the bell and making his demand to Al about help me out than just looking that he'd already found what he was seeking. It was hanging right there by the front door. So everybody goes blasting by that, and then we've got to come back again, and the universe goes, okay, one more time. Do we have this? Do we have this? One more time, right? And fortunately, if we're on the path of consciousness, we're expanding and growing in that so that, we're getting back, we're finding it a little faster the next time, and the next time, and the next time. Yeah. So moving on, Al says it's a handsome bell rope, isn't it? And Pooh nodded and says, yes, it does remind me of something, but I can't think what. Where did you get it? And Al says, I came across it in the forest. It was hanging over a bush. And I thought at first somebody lived there, so I rang it. Nothing happened. And then I rang it again, very loudly. And it came off in my hand. And as nobody seemed to want it, I took it home. Al, Pooh said solemnly, you have made a mistake. Somebody did want it. Who? Ooh. My dear friend Eeyore, he was fond of it. Fond of it? Attached to it, actually. And with these words, he unhooked it and carried it back to Eeyore, and Christopher Robin nailed it on in the right place. And Eeyore frisked around the forest, waving his tail happily, and Winnie the Pooh felt all funny and had to hurry home for a little snack of something to sustain him. It seems we always end with Winnie eating, don't we? So Pooh manifested this tail. He manifested the tail. He stated his declaration. He stated his realization statement. I will find the tail. And then he went about and did the work and did it. He listened to his inner guidance. He followed his inner guidance and listened to Owl and discovered the rope, the bell rope. So we talked about why Pooh took this on, and it's a lot like Kathy's song, what would love do here? What would love do here? What is the motivation for your desires? Is it truly to help, aid, assist someone, or is it for ourselves? And neither are wrong. But I just asked to look at the motivation. And this whole manifestation process can be filled with specifics and subtleties. Specifics and subtleties. And if we're looking to manifest change, and let's say maybe we're looking for a soulmate or a relationship, and we've got the condition portion in the world of effects. But then when we can get below that into the deeper realm of that idea and really look at what is my motivation for that? Why? What is my soul's purpose in that? We might find that it is simply to validate the fact that we are lovable and cherishable. Because isn't self-love one of those places that we talk about and yet there's a struggle with? Gay and Katie Hendricks have a program they've had for 30 years. They've been successfully married. And Gay tells the story of how he did not love himself for so long and just had this series of relationships that never worked. And until he figured out how to love himself, and then he dropped 100 pounds. He dropped 100 pounds. He's kept it off. He and Katie met. They've been married and successful relationship ever since. But it's all about that idea of self-love. That idea of self-love. What if we're looking at something more material in the form of a car? Maybe we're looking to manifest new wheels. Now, we're not really wanting tons of steel and rubber tires, right? That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for perhaps validation that the universe is abundant, and it does flow through me. I live in an abundant universe, and I am worthy of receiving that. Maybe career. When we get out of blaming the job that we're in and the people we work with or the one that we used to have, and we can look at career from the standpoint of what is my soul's purpose in this? What is my soul's purpose in this? Maybe it's freedom. Maybe it's acknowledgement, appreciation. But when we go within, everybody's answers will be different, but when we go within and we really get below that surface idea and can look at the underlying consciousness and ask those questions at that soul level, then the consciousness changes, the condition changes. We're always working on the conditions, aren't we? We're working on the conditions. But when we work on the consciousness, like we talked last month, when we work on the consciousness, when we can shift our underlying consciousness around it, then the condition falls away easily, naturally, because it's no longer supported, right? What we don't feed goes away. Yeah. So I think our friend Pooh has given us a beautiful message today in this idea of manifesting from the standpoint of love. Manifesting from the standpoint of love and friendship and compassion. And looking at our why. looking at, there's a book out now about looking at our why, and I'm looking at that book a little bit right now. But it's an interesting study for us to look at our why and to get below the surface of the things that we believe that we want. Do we want them for our own reasons or because somebody told us we should have them? So as I mentioned last week, I'm sharing the pearls of wisdom this month with the characters of the village, of the forest. And today is no different. So we're going to look at one from Eeyore, Pooh, and Rabbit, who we've not yet met. So Eeyore says, a little consideration, a little thought for others makes all the difference. Now this is our depressed donkey. A little consideration, a little thought for others makes all the difference. Just being self-aware, taking a minute to realize how our words and actions impact the people around us. We all have had experiences of people who are not self-aware and don't realize their words have impact on people around them and what they say and how they behave, and we've experienced that. And yet self-awareness is for ourselves as well, to be aware of our interactions on other people. A little consideration, a little thought for others. And then from Pooh, some people care too much. I think it's called love. And I hope that's just not possible to care too much. I just hope that's not possible. Pooh cares about all of his friends in the forest, doesn't he? He's kind of the one that just goes around and loves on all of them all the time. The rest of them have their resistance with each other, but Pooh's always kind of the peacemaker. So he's always the one that brings love to the forest. What would love do here? And then third, from Rabbit, he says, you can't stay in your corner of the forest waiting for others to come to you. You have to go to them sometimes. Anybody experience that? Get mad because somebody didn't reach out? I remember growing up, we had aunts and uncles that would visit from out of state, and they would come in and visit with one aunt or uncle literally across the street, okay? I mean, you could see the house. And they wouldn't come to my dad's house, and he'd get so mad. It's like they drove 1,000 miles to come and visit. You can't walk across the street? And it was always this funny thing. But it's like you can't stay in your corner of the forest. We have to step out. We have to reach out. Send the email. Make the phone call. Say hello. Again, growing up in a small town, anytime we'd go to town, you spoke to everybody you passed on the street. Good morning. Good morning. Hi, how you doing? You might not know them. It didn't matter. You know, back home, everybody waves. You just kept your hands on the wheel and you wave. Anybody do that? You just wave at everybody? Well, when you move to the city, that doesn't work so well, right? You got all this traffic. You can't wave to everybody. And you think of New York City and those big sidewalks and that mass of humanity, you certainly can't speak to everybody. So I think we turn that off somewhat. And even when we're walking one-on-one, we don't speak. Elevators are one of my favorite. Anybody talk to people in elevators? Isn't that fun? I mean, it freaks them out, right? They're going to go, whoa, why are you talking? Nobody talks in elevators. Or get in the elevator and just face this way. Keep your back to the door. And they're all like, what are you doing? Turn around. Yeah, because we're programmed, aren't we? Get in the elevator, turn around, walk to the back. Yeah. So get out of our corner of the forest sometimes. Reach out. So our practice this week, what are we going to do? My whole thing is about how do we apply these principles? How do we apply this teaching? If I can't take it home with me and use it during the week, then it's not practical. So today, my invitation to practice is step 1. Take a moment and think about something that you are seeking to see changed or shifted in your life. Think about what that is. Career, relationship, finance, health, spirituality, some area of your life that you want to see a change in. And then think about the condition you would prefer to experience. So a lot of times we'll get stuck in that first step of, I don't like this, but yet we're not focusing on what would I prefer instead. What would I prefer instead? And another powerful thing to do in that moment is to think about your life when that is manifested. If it's health, how will my day be today when I have lost the weight, eat better, I'm physically fit, whatever it might be, when I'm that, how will my day look? What time will I get up? What will I have for breakfast? What will I do? Where will I go? Who will I see? When I have $1 million in the bank, if that's your goal, who will I be? What will I do? Who will I meet? What will my life look like? Own it. Ernest Holmes, embody, right? That's his favorite word, embody it. So embody the new that you want to see and experience. And then the third step is then to, of course, go deeper for the wisdom in that underlying consciousness that your soul seeks. Ask. Beyond the world of effects and conditions, ask your soul, why do we want this? Why do I want this? Find the underlying consciousness. And then once you make the shift, the consciousness will develop and the conditions will change automatically. They have to. They have to, because they're no longer supported by the old belief. They have to shift. It's like the first 2 steps of treatment. You know, if we get those 2 steps, God is all there is, I am that which we are one. If we really get that, well, then anything we could ever possibly dream of is already there too, right? It's already there too, if we can get those first 2 steps. So I want to close today with a quote from our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, author of The Science of Mind, founder of this teaching, where he says the experience must be in consciousness. The experience must be in consciousness. Change the consciousness and the false condition will disappear. You know, I've had deeper realization this week that we attract, we manifest what we are. We hear that. But when you experience it and you realize it, it's an amazing shift in our awareness. So I wish that for everyone, I really do, that you can grasp this idea of changing the consciousness and the false conditions will fall away. It's not the other way around. Oh yeah, when that goes away, then my consciousness will be deeper, right? It's not that. It's not that. You'll see it when you believe it, as Wayne Dyer said. So let's take this into prayer. If you would please join me, I'd like to anchor this today for us in an affirmative prayer. So as we just breathe in that one universal breath of life shared by all of us, we recognize that there is only one power, one presence, one life, one mind. There's one source of all that is, was, will ever be, and that is the power, it is the presence of the universe, this one and any others that exist. It is love. It is those powerful emotions of love and peace and joy and harmony. And all of that is here now, present. In, through, and as me, in, through, and as each one in this room, in, through, and as all of life, for it is only one. We are individualized, unique expressions of it, but there's only one. So from that place, I speak my word for and about each one of us this day, knowing that whatever that desire or dream we may have on our hearts, that we're able to open to that deeper call of our soul and discover that underlying why. and simply allow the false conditions to fall away and allow the manifestation to come forward, to come forth. And I know, too, that we ask that question, what would love do here? For it is all about love. And I speak a word this day on all of those who made their transition last evening in the violence that occurred in Miami, and those that were injured. And just sending our love, our peace, and holding that consciousness of love in a world that works for all, knowing that resistance does not solve that. Only love will. Only love will. And how grateful I am for the manifestation of this prayer, for the realization of love and peace, as I just release this into the action of law, knowing that it is done, it is so, and we affirm it and anchor it together by saying, and so it is.